Hey YouTube, it's AI Rigma here. So this is our fourth session in Road to Cat RC Explain series. This is a sociology-based RC. As usual, I will provide the PDF of the session in the comment section below so you can check that out. So let's get started. Throughout history, human belief systems have undergone profound transformations. Initially, civilizations like the Greek and Romans adhered to polytheistic faiths, attributing diverse powers to numerous gods and goddesses. This was followed by the emergence of major monotheistic religions, where humanity shifted its devotion to a singular divine entity, albeit revered under various names across culture. So, what the author is saying that throughout human history, or you can say history, human belief system have undergone profound changes. Where initially there were civilizations like Greeks and Romans, and they used to worship polytheistic faiths. They used to believe that there were multiple gods. In Greek civilization specifically, if you closely remember that there are 12 Olympians who are, you can say, Zeus, Hera, Poseidon, Apollo, etc. They were multiple gods, so they used to worship multiple gods, and this was, you can say, followed by the shift toward monotheistic faiths. Then the people used to revere only a single god like entity. Okay, so this is being said in the first paragraph. More recently, a further ideological shift has occurred, wherein a significant portion of humanity seems to have placed its faith in a particular aspect of a god, namely the invisible hand of market forces, with people worshipping just the one part of God. So, what the author is doing here, the invisible hand. So what the author says here is that what has occurred more recently, that a further ideological shift has occurred. Now, rather than, you can say, worshipping a singular divine entity, we are actually, you can say, humanity is worshipping plate in a particular aspect of a god, a particular aspect of a god, which is called the invisible hand, specifically talking about capitalism, if I believe, because invisible hand is the how the working of a market works, and the market forces here refers to the demand and supply of a capitalism. Specifically, I can predict that because invisible hand is specifically related to that. So let's read further. Propelled by the theorists of Adam Smith and subsequent neoclassical economists, the world has witnessed an unprecedented surge in the wealth and population figures. So what the author has said right now, that there were, you can say, theories. Like there were theories by Adam Smith and subsequent neoclassical economists, and theories of these people actually propelled the world to have a, you can say, unprecedented surge. We know, until now we have not seen such kind of surge in wealth and populations. So both wealth and population figures were increased. So this is specifically the author has said. This growth makes it challenging to even conceive of life before the industrial revolution, a pivotal era that transitioned social reliance from predominantly human, and it might seem human and animal muscle power, to the concentrated energy of fossil fuels such as coal, oil, and natural gas. So, what the author is saying, because of this growth, because the growth has occurred so much, we have not seen such kind of growth in wealth and population. Due to that, it's become really harder to even conceive of life before how, like before industrial revolution. We can't even think of how life was before industrial revolution. In before industrial revolution, people used to rely on muscle power and manpower, but now it's more related to fossil fuels and, you can say, natural gas. That's how the like the wheels have turned out. While it might seem improbable that the possibility that humanity could regress into an era of scarcer and more expensive energy cannot be dismissed. So what the author has said, that although it is unlikely, improbable means unlikely, or something which is not likely to be come true. So the author has said that although it might seem unlikely that it might seem unlikely, but it's more than enough possibility that we may go into an era where the energy resources or the fossil fuels that we are using, the energy resources could become so scarcer. Due to that, it can become expensive. So what the author is portraying by this line, that we are exploiting fossil fuels at such a tremendous rate that era or a future where we, fossil fuels are depleted and they become much more scarcer, and due to that they are expensive, is, you can say, the author is trying to portray here. This brings us to the concept of Fostian bargain. So, author now introduces a topic which is called as the Fostian bargain. This critical agreement remains largely unacknowledged because its full exposure by the proponents of the modern economics would compel a fundamental revolution of our current lifestyles, of our motivations, and the legacy we are preparing for the future generation. Now the author has not, explained us what Faustian bargain is. This is a specific thing that you have to remember. Author has said that he has introduced a topic which is called as a Fostian bargain. An author has said that this critical agreement, what he called a critical agreement, it is largely unacknowledged. This is not acknowledged by the proponents, or you can say advocates of proponents, which means supporters or advocates of modern economics. So the people who support modern economics, they are actually not acknowledging the concept of Faustian bargain, because if they do acknowledge the concept of Faustian bargain, then they have to actually overhaul, or you can say reevaluate their current lifestyles, or you can say fundamentals and evolution of the current lifestyles, their motivations, because the sort of legacy what they are doing right now might not be, you can say, pretty good. So that's why they are not acknowledging that this concept of Faustian bargain, because if they do acknowledge it, then they have to overhaul, like completely reevaluation of their own lifestyles. The Faustian bargain can be summarized thus. So now, author is introducing, you can say, author is actually defining what Faustian bargain is. The discovery and extensive exploitation of fossil fuels have enabled humanity, through primarily a privileged minority, to attain a level of affluence today that even ancient monarchs could scarcely have imagined. So, what the author has said right now here, that the Faustian bargain is can summarized in such a way that we have discovered and we have exploited the fossil fuels to such an extent that there are, you can say, in general humanity, and specifically only a specific minority has been able to attain a wealth, you can say affluence or wealth, that might not have been seen by the earlier monarchs as well. It's so much wealth that we have managed to accumulate by, you can say, extensive exploitation of fossil fuels. So we have gained so much, but there might be something that we have lost. That is the aspect of fossil bargain. You have gained so much, but always you're gonna, if you are gaining so much, there might be something that you have lost, and that is the concept of, you can say, fossil bargain. So let's look at the next paragraph. Furthermore, a portion of these finite energy resources has been strategically utilized to dramatically increase global food supplies and facilitate an exponential expansion of the human population. Now, author is introducing in another aspect that the finite energy resources that you are using, as not only, you can say, not only you have managed to hoard wealth with it, but you are actually using that to increase the global food supply, because the human population is definitely growing due to that. This demographic growth in turns provides the economic system with an ever increasing supply of both workers and consumers, a prerequisite for maintaining the continuous growth mandated by our prevailing economic model. So, what this line is specifically said, that there is actually an economic model, and due to that economic model, we are actually exploiting, you can say, fossil fuels. We are continuously exploiting fossil fuels, and by continuously exploiting the fossil fuels, we are actually there is, you can say, the food supply is actually increasing. Because the food supply is all increasing, the population is also increasing, and due to that, the, you can say, consumer and workers are also increasing, and this in turn fuels the economic model. This is a prerequisite, as you can see here also, that this demographic growth in turn provides the economic model with an ever increasing supply of both workers and consumer, which is a prerequisite of maintaining the continuous growth model, which means this, it's a loop which is going on. The global population surged from 1.6 billion in 1900 to 7 billion today. It's, you can say, a tremendous rise, with an additional 80 million individuals joining each year. Consequently, humans have rapidly become the most numerous large animal species on the planet. So, author is saying what is the, you can say, then aspect of, you can say, using those energy resources or the fossil fuels. The concept of Faustian bargain has been applied onto a demographic population, is that by exploiting the fossil fuels, you are increasing the population, which in turn, you can say, providing you a lot of, you can say, consumers and workers, which is a prerequisite for working of this economic model. The hidden facet or the aspect of this bargain, conspicuously absent from economic discourse, is this: at some point in the future, a time that draws ever nearer, the current economic system will become unsustainable. So, author now is taking a stance. Author is saying that what the hidden, you have not considered a hidden aspect of this bargain, which is absent from your economic discourse. You are not even, you can say, discussing this in your economic, you can say, whatever discourse that you're doing. The main point is this: at some point of time, your, you can say, the current economic system or the current economic model that you're adopting, this will become unsustainable. This will no longer work. This system, which consumes energy and resources at an accelerating rate while simultaneously generating waste products beyond Earth's ecological absorption capacity, cannot persist indefinitely. So, what the author has said, that the system that you're operating right now, and you can say, which uses energy and resources at an unprecedented rate and it generates waste, this is actually not this cannot persist indefinitely, because the earth's capacity to handle such resources is not, you can say, sufficient. In simple terms, industrial society as we know it cannot continue its present trajectory for much longer, not even close. So what the author has said right now is, that the industrial society that we are working right now cannot manage everything that's being going on. Our economic framework must ultimately operate within its finite boundaries of earth resources. Now, author is saying how our economic, you can say, framework or model, how, what are the suggestions that the author is making, that it should do this, it should, operate within the boundaries of earth resources. Thus recent and current generation have metaphorically sold their soul to the devil for fleeting material prosperity, leaving the devil to claim his due when the system inevitably collapses under its own inherent pressure, potentially leading to widespread societal breakdown. So what the author has said, that metaphorically, recent and current generations have actually sold their soul to the devil for fleeting material prosperity. For some, fleeting means one thing which is short lived. So what the author has said, what the current generation have said, you can say done, is that the current and the previous generation have sold their soul to the devil for, you can say, for fleeting material prosperity, for getting temporary influence or getting temporary wealth. They have sacrificed the long term sustainability of the generation, leaving the devil to claim his due when the system inevitably collapses. And when the system will inevitably collapse, which the author is definitely sure of, when the system collapses, the devil will come to, you can say, get his due. Like things will come back to bite you, potentially leading to widespread societal breakdown, and that will cause a widespread societal breakdown. While these dire consequences are not imminent, but the author says that these are not imminent, these will not happen tomorrow, next week, or even this year. Our economic system is demonstrably weakening at both its input and output end. So we can say that our system is actually getting weakened both by input and output end. So that's being mentioned by the author. Okay. For a substantial portion of the global population, life may become increasingly challenging. Incomes may decline and uncertainty may grow. This does not signify the end of the world, but it strongly suggests that the future generation will likely experience standard of living which is vastly different from the current one. Rather than confronting the unsustainability of the present system, the affluent and the powerful segments of the society are expected to exert every effort to preserve the existing order. So author is saying that for the substantial portion of the global population, you can say life may become increasingly different from what we are experiencing right now. It may become challenging, it may become difficult from them, as income will decline and uncertainty will definitely grow. And author is definitely saying that this does not mean the world will end, but this means that the lives of the people who are going to be coming after us would be vastly different from what we are living right now. Then the author is saying, then the wealthy ones or the affluent one or the powerful ones on the society, rather than confronting the unsustainability of, you can say, the current economic system, they are actually doing whatever they can to sustain the present economic order. So that's the author's take. So as you can see, this is a pretty, you can say, doable paragraph. There is nothing which is, you can say, extremely too difficult here. We start with the, you can say, belief of the human belief system, how the human belief system grew. Then we drew upon, you can say, capitalism aspect of the society, or you can say the economic model, which is being on the theories of Adam Smith. We introduced the theories of Adam Smith, and then we went on to, you can say, Fostian bargain, the concept of Fostian bargain, that we are using fossil fuels at such an extensive rate that we are able to, you can gather a lot much wealth that anybody has ever seen, but there's a hidden cost behind it. That is the concept of hidden, you can say, Fostian bargain. Then we introduced that Fostian bargain concept onto the demographic population. We describe the economic model is, you can say, self-sustaining with the help of uh, you can say consumers and workers, because the population is being growing. So we exploit economic model exploits fossil fuels, due to the exploitation of fossil fuel, food grows. After that, population grows. Due to that, consumers and workers actually grows on, and that actually aids in the economic model itself. So this is a complete loop. Then we go on with the hidden aspect of the bargain. What the author says, that the economic model will eventually collapse. Then it goes on to saying that like we have sold the soul to the devil, and you can say consequences are definitely not imminent, but they will come in the future. And then at the end we conclude that you can say the population of the future would have vastly different lives than what we have. Their lives will be challenging, and the powerful must not, you can say, preserve the existing order, but they should be advocating for a solution. That's the thing that the author has said. So let's look at the solutions and the questions as well. So let's look at the questions as well. What broad time frame does recently the second paragraph refer to? So let's go on to the second paragraph itself. So this is the second paragraph. Let me just do one thing. Okay, so this is the second paragraph. Now, author has used the word recently, more recently. So let's read this. A further ideological shift has occurred wherein a significant portion of humanity seems to have placed faith in particular aspect of a god, namely the invisible hand of market forces, with people worshipping just one part of a god, the invisible hand. Propelled by the theories of Adam Smith and subsequent neoclassical economists, the world has witnessed an unprecedented surge in the wealth and population figures. This growth makes it challenging to even conceive of life before the Industrial Revolution, a pivotal era that transitioned societal reliance from predominantly human and animal muscle power to the concentrated energy of fossil fuels such as coal, oil, and natural gas. So, more specifically, I can think that this recently has been used in the term of, you can say, industrial revolution, the time of industrial revolution, when industrial revolution was kicking off and capitalism was coming into the play. So that might be the case that this specifically recently has been used. So let's look at the options. Dawn of the 21st century, there was no mention of 21st century, so this is not the answer. Post WTO regime and end 20th century, so there was no mention of WTO, isn't it? We haven't seen a word of WTO anywhere else, so this is not the option. Post war era, there was no mention of war era, so this is not the answer. So definitely by elimination 4 is the answer. Or let's look at the option as well. Post industrial revolution, early 19th century, that was the only reference that was given in this question, so this is probably the answer to, you can say, this question. So fourth is the correct answer to the first question. Let's look at the second question as well. Which of the following can be most accurately inferred about the role of population growth within the Faustian bargain as described in the passage? So we know the how Faustian bargain, you can say, operated. We can just go back here as well. Yeah, this was the concept of Faustian bargain, is that the economic model was, exploiting fossil fuels, and fossil fuels were, thereby increasing the you can say production of food, and due to the production of food was increasing, population was increasing. As a result, the consumers and workers were increasing, which were a prerequisite for the economic model to sustain itself. That's being mentioned here. You can read this as well. This demographic growth in turn provide the economic system with an ever increasing supply of both workers and consumer, a prerequisite for maintaining the continuous growth mandated by a prevailing economic model. So that's the concept of Faustian bargain that we have to apply. So let's look at the options. It functions as a self-reinforcing feedback loop that is simultaneously essential for the economic model's operation and a primary driver for eventual unsustainability. That is actually correct. It as captures the essence that this, you can say, population growth. This is actually as this functions as a self-enforcing feedback of loop that is simultaneously essential for the economic model's operation, and also it is a primary driver for its eventual unsustainability. Not only it is essential for economic model's operation, but it also causes the unsustainability in the eventual unsustainability. So this is actually the correct answer. Let's look at the second, third, and fourth answer, and let's look why they might not be correct. It is a positive independent variable that modern economics successfully harness to create unprecedented wealth for a privileged minority. Now, the main point is here: population growth is not positive. First thing that you have to remember, and it's not an independent variable. It's not an independent variable. We have clearly seen that it is dependent. It's based on, you can say, a chain. In a chain like manner, it has been dependent. So there are two reasons that this option can be ruled out. It is not positive. It is, you can say, eventual. It is the causer of eventual unsustainability, and it is not an independent variable. It is a dependent variable. So that's why second is not the answer. It is a direct and unfortunate consequence of increased food supply, acting as the primary burden that weakens the economic system from within. Now, I will tell you why this question is wrong. First thing is that this is not an unfortunate consequence. The unfortunate consequence is not that, you can say, that the population is growing. The thing is that population is the main thing. The main problem here is that, economic model that we are operating, it is actually exploiting, you can say, fossil fuels. And as because the main problem is that the economic model is exploiting fossil fuels, due to that effect, because the fossil fuels are exploited, you can say food is growing. Because the food is growing, you can say population is definitely growing, and population is growing, so you can say consumers and, you can say, workers are growing, and this is sustaining the economic model. So clearly the main problem here is the economic model, which is, you can say, exploiting fossil fuels. So this is, blatantly wrong. It is a direct and unfortunate consequence of increased food supply, acting as the primary burden that weakens the economic system from within. So this is a clever misdirection. So that is why this is not the answer. The answer is for first is more opt. You can say between first and third there might be contention, that might some people might mark 3, but 3 is not the answer, because first captures the essence of Faustian bargain. What is the Faustian bargain is not about? Faustian bargain is not about population growth. Faustian bargain is not about food is increasing. Faustian bargain, as you can clearly see in here also, The Faustian bargain concept. The Faustian bargain can be summarized thus: the discovery and extensive exploitation of fossil fuels that have enabled humans to attain a level of affluence today that have been even ancient monarchs could easily have been imagined. So it's much more focused on the essence of exploitation of fossil fuels rather than on food and population. This is a secondary effect. This is a primary effect that you have to remember. It is a main factor that distinguishes the modern economic belief system from earlier polytheistic and monotheistic belief system. As you can clearly see, this is an alien thing. This is an alien answer that does not belong to like this paragraph. What they have done cleverly is just they have extracted this one sentence that had been mentioned in the first paragraph, and they have just, you can say, put it that into this. So this is clearly not the answer. First is the correct answer. Then we have question number 3. A historian presents the Green Revolution of the mid 20th century, where new agricultural technologies dramatically increased crop yields and fed billions, as an unqualified triumph of human ingenuity. Based on the logic of the Faustian bargain, how would the author of the passage most likely critique the historian assessment? So, took a minute and absorb the question, what the question is saying. The question has said that there is an historian who is presenting green revolution. In green revolution, the like crops were, so there was astronomical increase in crop yield. So what the historian is presenting green revolution as an unqualified triumph of human ingenuity. So what would be the author's critique, you can say, using the concept of Faustian bargain? So we have, at this point you might be have completely familiarized with the topic of Faustian bargain. What the Faustian bargain is that you are exploiting fossil fuels at an unprecedented level, and you are managed to gain a lot of influence or wealth by it, but there might be a hidden cost. It's just you're not gaining something, you're also losing something. There is a hidden cost associated with it. So we have to address that, because of what that historian is claiming, it is an unqualified triumph. There is no hidden cost behind it. It's low, it's like all well is going on, but that's not the case. We know that there is a hidden cost associated with it. So any option which tackles to this point would be the answer. By claiming that focusing on crop yields ignored the most important goal of preserving the traditional lifestyles of farmers. So we know that there was no preserving the traditional lifestyle of farmers is not the essence here. So this is out. By arguing that the triumph was powered by a massive unacknowledged expenditure of finite fossil fuels, thereby deepening humanity's commitment to an unsustainable economic model. This is exactly what the author is talking about. That it was not an unqualified triumph. It involves unacknowledged expenditures of fossil fuels. It has a hidden cost behind it. So that's why second is looks like to me the perfect option. So let's check the 3 and 4 further. By pointing out that the population boom it created would inevitably lead to the widespread social breakdown and conflict over scarce resources. Now this is, you can say, clearly deceptive option. I will say why is not the correct option. First thing, we know we have to critique historians green revolution account. Historian is saying green revolution is pretty good because it doesn't have any hidden costs associated with it, and we have to critique it using Faustian bargain. Okay, so the critique about Faustian bargain would involve fossil fuel as well. There is no mention of fossil fuel here, thereby this is not a correct option due to one of the reason there is no mention of the fossil fuel years. Second thing is that this is actually a future consequence, that this can happen in the future. This is a projection that that the population boom it created would inevitably lead to widespread social breakdown or societal conflict over social resources. This can happen in the future, but even if it is true, let's say even if population boom it would created would, you can say, lead to widespread social breakdown and societal conflict over scarce resources, by a Faustian bargain we can't critique it. Although question wants us, based on the logic of Faustian bargain, how will you critique it? So Faustian bargain has to involve the use of fossil fuels, isn't it? Because it's based on that. We have explained, if you look at the where the fossil fuels have been exploited. Like, look at this. The Faustian bargain can be summarized as the discovery and extensive exploitation of fossil fuels. So you have to involve the angle of fossil fuel, isn't it? If you're not involving the use of fossil fuel, then how are you critiquing it? Using Faustian bargain itself, isn't it? So that's why 3 is wrong. This is a clever misdirection. If you mark 3, then you need to understand why you mark 3. By asserting that the Green Revolution was a failure because it primarily benefited a privileged minority while leaving future generation to suffer. Now the thing is that, okay, this is specifically true that green revolution specifically it was not a failure. You don't have to, like, you can't judge whether it's a failure or success because it primarily benefited a privilege. This is an opinion. This is a very strong opinion of someone. You can say that it primarily benefited a privileged minority, and this doesn't align with the Faustian bargain itself, because the Faustian bargain is saying that it needs fossil fuels. Like, you need the mention of fossil fuels here. So that's why this option is wrong. So the correct option is the second option. So let's check the question number 4 now. Which of the following can be inferred about the Fostian bargain? So we need to mention, like there is a lot questions which have been both faced on Fostian bargain, isn't it? That inferred about the Fostian bargain mentioned in the passage. For temporary affluence, we humans have sold our soul to the devil, who will collect his dues when our present economic system is no longer able to sustain itself. This is actually correct. This is specifically line by line, which is mentioned in the last second paragraph, that for temporary affluence, we humans have sold our soul to the devil. We have for temporary influence, we have for material prosperity specifically, we have sold our soul to the devil. We are not looking towards the long term. We are just using short term benefits for ourselves. So this seems like to me the most probable option. Second option. Man is so absorbed in the worship of mammon that he cannot see the environmental disaster ahead. Now, the thing is, this describes the motivation for entering the bargain. You can say we are worshipping wealth, the worship of wealth. This describes why, people are actually uh, being motivated for entering the bargain, because they want to worship the wealth. And not, but this is not explaining the bargain itself, what the bargain is all about. This is explaining why men worship wealth. Man is absorbed in the worship of mammon, like wealth, that he cannot see the environmental disaster itself, because he is so infatuated by the wealth concept. He is not seeing the disaster which is ahead. So this is the motivation, not the Faustian bargain itself. This is explaining why man is because man is invested in wealth, that's why he cannot see the environmental disaster ahead. So this explains actually the motivation and not the concept of Faustian bargain itself. That's why this is not the answer. Check the question. Answer number third. Man has been exploiting nature indiscriminately, which will strike back in the future. So this is not the answer as well, because this describes the method by which the you can say bargain is carried out. The Faustian bargain, it explains that Faustian bargain is being carried out by exploiting nature. We have been exploiting nature, but this is not explaining the actual exchange of present benefits for future cost. That this is the main key crux of information here. And due to this, option A is the only one that defines the complete, that we are doing this for that. This is incomplete. 3 is very incomplete here. Between 1 and 3, I will specifically choose one option here. So 3 is definitely incorrect. And 4, all of the above is definitely incorrect, because second is incorrect. So 4 is also not the answer. So 1 is definitely the answer. So as you can see, this was a pretty good, I would say, RC. It was not tough, but the question may seems like somewhat, you can say, trap based to you. So just look at the questions, and if you have any problems, definitely tell me, and we will keep on doing RC in the future as well.